Welcome back. This is a cool episode. It's a conversation between myself and another marketing agency owner where we break down the mindset around B2B growth. If relationships are what got your brand where it is, then what's next? I hope you enjoy it. All right, welcome back to Exploring Growth. Today I have Mike Grinberg, and we just having a little discussion right before we jumped on here. And we're two agency owners, right? So I think this is going to be a really interesting episode for marketing leaders, VPs, directors of smaller, to mid-size B2B companies, because we both think the same way when it comes to B2B growth. And I had Aaron Weeks, which also works the Proof Point, on a couple episodes ago. We talked about scaling relationships. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that. It's very good. It's kind of a primer to some future conversations we're going to have about that. But kind of like laying the foundation is this idea of, if you're a small company and you start, mom and pop, but also let's say you even bought it, right? Bought a small company. A lot of the way you grow is through network, word of mouth relationships. And as you hit a certain sort of, pivotal point, you realize that that's not scalable to the point of 100 million, 200 million, whatever. And a lot of companies, usually when they hit the mid-market tier, they're looking for a buyer to be acquired or something. It's a natural next step. But those are a lot of companies I work with, are these small marketing teams. They're trying to form who they are as a team, who's in the right seat, what skill sets are needed, what tools they should use, their stack, all of that. But strategy kind of gets put on the back burner until they realize all these tactical things that we're doing are not working. But yeah, so I thought, this is a great kind of point in time to sit and talk with two agency owners about maybe some of the trials and the successes we've had with our clients about B2B marketing. And so hopefully that sets you up, pretty good, Mike. Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, happy to. It's an awesome lead in here, and yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the number of times I have virtually the same conversation with somebody coming to us, and again, it's usually kind of that, it's like $25 to $50 million technical service-based business. That's usually who we focus on, and they've grown the company, from what I'll call brute force networking and relationship building.
Right.
One-on-one, they'll go to conferences, they'll do speaking engagements, they'll leverage their network, they'll ask for intros, all this kind of stuff. Maybe they'll get some referrals from clients. Sometimes they've done better at activating that specific part of the referral channel, like being able to better ask for referrals and creating a pipeline there. But usually they've stalled, right? Because that kind of brute force method is only giving them just enough to take care of attrition and churn.
Yeah.
So, and they often want to go to something very, very different, which is, again, if we want to label it, kind of more traditional lead gen stuff.
Yep.
And it just doesn't fit with what they're doing, right? Because they've traditionally built it through relationships, through deep conversation, all this kind of stuff. And now they want to churn out ebooks, do paid search, and do some SEO,
which is very different.
It's a very different mentality. It doesn't mean those channels can't work.
Right.
But they're like, oh, we just need, all of a sudden they're like, oh, we need scale. And they think scale means shotgun approach. When in reality, it shouldn't.
Right. Yeah. And I think the paid ad side of it does work. And you can make up a lot of ground quickly if you are skilled in that way. But it really should be supporting the other things that you're doing. Right. It shouldn't be, and then as you grow in your skill set or your team's skill set, you can obviously peel it off and have it have its own kind of ROI, I guess. But I think for marketing leaders that are listening to this is, and I would love for feedback too, like on LinkedIn or by email or whatever, like pick our brains on what's going on. I was talking with a marketing director the other day, and he is been given, a pretty good runway of time to like sit, and the prior person in his role didn't build the team really well, and it's kind of old school mindset, so they're refreshing everything. So he's been given some time to like think about the tools they're using, think about the people who need to be in the right seats for what they're doing, and spend some time on strategy, which is great. I mean, I don't hear that a lot. And so, it kind of jogged this as we started talking, it made sense. Like, I think marketing leaders that are in those positions where they're being tasked with, maybe they're hired in, and the company's like, hey, we need a fresh perspective. We need, like, we need growth, but we need it to be in continuity with what we've done in the
Mhm.
past. Maybe that's that person that's listening right now. They're in that seat where they're trying to make these decisions. Well, yeah, all those things, all the above are the things that I'm working on, and it's kind of overwhelming.
Mhm.
Where would someone like that start? Okay, like, they've been doing a lot. They come into the company, or they've been there for a little while. Now they're tasked with, we've been doing a lot of relationship stuff. Maybe they're doing conferences. Maybe some just old school networking. They've got email newsletters running. Stuff like that. Where would you direct them from that point forward?
Mhm. So there's one important thing I think to highlight as a baseline here is most of these companies are private. They generally don't have investment. Some of them do get, private equity kind of thing,
Hmm.
but that's what generally causes them to need to scale faster than they
Hmm.
have historically. And the goal of, if it's private equity, the goal is profit. It's not just growth.
That's right.
And if you're just private in general,
Hmm.
the goal is definitely profit.
Yeah.
So this is the big difference between these types of companies
Yeah.
and a VC-backed software company, for example,
Yeah.
right? Where profit doesn't come into the equation until much, much, much later. It's all
Hmm.
about grow, 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 grow. Even though
Hmm.
now they're saying, okay, yes, we need to be more conservative. But even then, if you've got a $10 million investment or a $50 million investment in your
Yeah.
series B or C, like, that's a very different ball game to
Yeah.
a bootstrapped, family owned, potentially or
Yes.
likely private business.
Those VC
So,
companies is where you end up with the head sandwich maker titles. Like, you have, 15 different marketing product led growth marketers that are
yep.
substacked. That's not reality. I don't think. I think the majority of companies, as we were talking before, aren't like that.
Yeah. So, why do I bring that up and why is it important? It's because if your focus is actually profitability rather than revenue,
Hmm.
profitability more than anything is an outcome of great relationships. Revenue is an outcome of great relationships
Hmm.
too, long term revenue. But if you want to have profitable clients, especially in the service business, these clients need to be more educated when they come inbound. They
Hmm.
need to be, you need to be having more conversations with them to be able to educate and to be able to build those relationships.
Hmm.
You need to be able to, again, get them more on your side so that once you, excuse me, get into the quote unquote negotiation phase of a contract,
Hmm.
they're more committed to
Yes.
a compromise of some sort.
Yeah. The way I would say it is, you need to spend more time with them virtually.
Mhm.
Like, maybe the owners and initial leaders spent physically, and some virtually. I think spending a lot of time on platforms like LinkedIn, or it could be Instagram or Twitter or other platforms, but being social, being physically, in front of them, but building those relationships and educating them is very key. I think
Yep.
that's very important.
So, going back to your original question, what should they focus on? What should they do?
Hmm.
To me, it's a mindset shift. It's a
Hmm.
mindset shift to relationships and conversations and looking at referrals as your core channel.
Hmm.
Now, this is where I think a definition is important, which is generally when you say the word referral, what does that mean to most people? They'll say, oh, it's, referrals from customers, or, oh, it's a formal partnership or referral program.
Hmm.
Yes, and yes, that's part of it. But actually, if you think about it, that's a small part of it. So,
Yes.
when I think of referrals and what I'd urge people to think about is there are various levels of referrals. And if you look at kind of X axis, Y axis, on the X
Mhm.
axis is you have relationship type or like relationship strength, meaning stranger, acquaintance,
Equity.
client,
Yeah.
friend. And on the vertical axis, you have um, referral difficulty or social capital required.
Hmm.
You'll have something that looks like almost like a standard distribution curve, except it never goes out completely down.
Hmm.
Kind of flatten out maybe toward the middle.
Yeah.
Because in the very beginning, and actually, let me go the other way. At the very end, that's where most people will focus. They'll focus on
Yep.
friends and family and things like that,
Sort of the
right?
bottom of the
Like,
funnel where they know you, trust you.
exactly.
Yeah.
But those are few and far between. Your network, and like, sure, some people have bigger networks than others, but in general,
Yeah.
those strong
Call
relationships,
it 100 people.
they only go so far.
Yeah.
And if you want to scale that business to 100 million, good luck. That's not going to get you there.
Not going
Right?
to happen with 100
Even
people.
if you're selling $500,000, $2 million projects, at some
Yeah.
point those projects run out, so there's natural churn, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Then they'll go to the next thing, which is clients. Now, the problem that they forget is with clients, that's the highest amount of social capital. So it's going to take you a long time and a lot of effort to get consistent and enough volume out of that. Number one, how many clients do you have,
Yeah.
current
B2B
and
is
past,
generally not a high volume.
especially in service businesses,
Right.
right? Like high ticket service businesses. And even if you do have more clients, it's a lot of effort. Meaning, number
On
one,
the
you have to
back
have
end. On the back end is a
exactly
lot of effort. Yeah.
for both, right? So it's a lot of effort for you to build up the relationship, do the great work, create a maybe more
Sure.
formal ask,
Sure.
create a system where not just the CEO can make the ask, but the salespeople or the account managers or
Right.
the directors, managing directors, whoever, right? Build those relationships. But then also for the clients, number one, it's an ask, which means, well, they don't owe you anything. Let's be honest. You you've done the work for them. They paid you for the work. That's it. That's the exchange,
Yeah.
right? So you have to have built that relationship. So there's the time aspect and there's the social capital and clout aspect, meaning, okay, I know you, but I don't know you, meaning we're not best
Yeah.
friends if we're clients. Okay.
Yeah.
So for me to go out proactively and say, hey, Joe, or hey, Kate, or whatever, you should talk to Lee at such and such company, or Mike at Proofpoint, or whatever, or doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's a lot of social clout. I need to really trust that you're going to deliver, because otherwise I look like an a-hole.
Yeah. So it's going to take a long period of time for you to build
Right.
that, which is going to be at least months.
Yep. So that's where most people focus. What they won't focus on is where most of the scale is actually on that front end of that spectrum. If it's that person who has never worked with you, probably never even talked to you, but has seen your content on LinkedIn, seen you speak at a conference, attended your event, listened to your podcast, bought your book, whatever your special sauce of demand gen is. And I even hate to use the words demand gen because that means a lot of different things to different people. But your special sauce of relationship building, the end of that first thing that gets people excited, there's zero social capital required, pretty much.
Right. Yeah.
Because I'm talking, whatever, me and you are
It's
talking,
scalable.
and you happen to be maybe talking about, look, I'll throw this out there totally randomly because it'll be a real thing. You say, hey, Mike, we're looking at building out a more robust referral program. We're looking at a platform, not really sure how to activate our team. I'll go, hey, you know what? You should look in this platform called smallworld.ai. We just had, David Rush, David, free advertisement for you. You didn't pay me for this.
Yeah.
Like, you should talk to him about their platform because that's literally what they do.
Yeah.
Zero, I don't care. Like, you don't like
Yeah.
David, you don't like their platform. I don't care. I lost nothing for it because I never worked with them. I'm openly telling you that. It took me all of 2 seconds. That's where the biggest opportunity for scale is. And what people miss is there is a way to operationalize that.
Yeah.
Also, I'll stop there because
Well, yeah. So I would say this: if we zoom out just a one click and look at the macro picture, one thing I always share with my clients on the very very front end of talking about any type of marketing strategy is to just give them a clear, simple, almost like limited picture of what your ecosystem system looks like. Right. So you have you, the brand, and you have the buyer, and then you have stakeholders and influencers around the buyer that are mostly internal, depending on your sale. And then you have your clients, like you talked about, who can refer you. And then you have your partners or allies. And the more complicated your product or service and how the buyer buys it can change some of those nuances, but majority of them are all the same. So then it's about influencing the conversations between all of those, right? So it's the conversation you're having between the brand and the buyer. That's building a brand directly. It's running ads directly. It's sending emails directly. And I think that's how most marketers think about it. It's we want to go, an ad in the paper, or we want to like shake someone's hand, but there's no in between.
Mm-hmm.
But there are these two other parties, major parties, which are your current clients that can, definitely should go after, even though
Mm-hmm.
you need to operationalize it so there's a sustainability feature there on time, for ongoing. And then from the partner side, that's really where I think, to your point, when you're creating content that is shareable, your partners are having all these conversations with your buyers. They're building trust back on their back. So the social
Mm-hmm.
proof that takes you so long to build with the customer, they've already got built with lots of their customers. So if you have, let's say you have 50 customers, each one of them have 50 customers. So, the shareability of that relationship and the trust is scalable. And then of course, remember that all of these people, if you're, in a, I don't want to say necessarily has to be in a niche, but typically if you're in a targeted industry or area that you're serving, those people who are your partners are going to serve, in very complementary ways. And your clients are going to be very similar to the ones you want to, this goes back to your business model and again, some strategy. But just having that simple framework helps marketers to say, like, to take everything you're saying and put it into practice, where they say, okay, we could just literally look at these four parties and say, which one do we want to focus on? And then what's our path to reaching these people?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the bigger conversation here, as we get deeper into it, is this idea of creating content essentially that is scalable amongst all those parties. And you brought up demand gen, which I think is, again, I always say this. I feel like I've said this on every podcast episode, but all the marketers like to do is make up new acronyms and new words to play around with. And I think a lot of it comes out of the VC backed tech stuff.
100%.
Us like small time marketers over here, we're actually talking to real customers. Are we don't make up acronyms every day. We just kind of say, yeah, well, that worked, let's do it again. But I think the quote unquote demand gen is a good, if I think also a lot of marketers listen to this may have been the first time they've heard this. They may be interested in learning more about it because it's so different than lead gen or running ads specifically and having workflows and sequences. When you go and look into that, it's about educating your client through the journey, right? Through the awareness, engagement, nurture, conversion. And but if you apply it in a way that, in the framework that I'm saying too, a macro framework of, okay, how do we do this in a way that serves our partner, our allies, that then pass along the word, and how we do this in a way that serves our buyer and our clients. I think that's really the thinking. Back to mindset, that's really the thinking that these marketing directors should be trying to turn their brain from, we need to run ads. Yes, you probably do have to run ads at some point, but let's pull it back and say, how did we get here? Relationships. How do we scale relationships? Well, it's going to be content, and it's going to be now thinking about those people you're creating content for.
Yep. Yeah, so number one, I love that you mentioned the ecosystem, because we do something very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I'll say is I think one of the big misses that people make is they don't think enough about the external influencers. Because again, the word influencer is kind of murky. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned like buying influencer. Well, do they directly influence the buying cycle? Sometimes it might be a consultant, sure.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just they influence whether you come into the buying cycle at all or not. So, I'll give you a couple examples. We're working with this is actually a software company, an ag tech firm, and they found that one of their, they found this anomaly where they were getting a number of referrals from CPAs that were specifically working with family farms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you can either not do much with that, and just say, okay, cool, we can expect X number. Or you can really double down on it and say, all right, what percentage of these do we close? Are they bigger deals or the smaller deals? If it's worthwhile, awesome. How do we find more of these people? How do we build stronger partnerships? Can we start a podcast with them? So the more of these people that listen to them already come into our orbit, right? Make it easier for them to, like, all these things, like, as long as you, and there's a prerequisite here along all this stuff, whether it's a partner, influencer, internal, external. I can mention a couple other interesting examples, maybe, but any way you slice it, you have to have this core brand infrastructure in place.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have your category, for lack of a better word, a POV on the market, like, especially if you're a service-based business, like,
You got to be clear about what it is you do for whom.
yep. And why, and like, how is it different, right? It's what
Mm-hmm.
is, I mean, look, marketing agencies are a dime a dozen,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, Biotech for consulting groups are a dime a dozen. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not as much as marketing agencies, but still.
Yeah, probably not.
IT firms, cybersecurity firms, all this stuff, right? At
Yeah.
the end of the day, you can make the argument, well, it's all commodity, like everybody does the same thing.
Yeah.
But do they?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have, everybody's got some sort of special sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got a slightly different view on the market. How do you make that come to life? That's a big part of your brand. There's a culture component, meaning, does your team, and I just talked to a CMO, really interesting conversation yesterday about it. Or sorry, not yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. Like, do they get it? Can they repeat it?
Mm-hmm.
Both of those things are important. They actually have to understand it.
Yeah.
And be able to evangelize it. So, like, all those branding components are core before you can do all these tactics.
That's right.
Because people always want to jump to tactics. It's like, oh, cool. Well, like I told the story on our show the other day. I'm like, oh, well, your employee candidate pipeline can be a revenue generator, can be a relationship generator for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically preface it, don't just go try to copy this, because if you don't have your brand architecture in place, it won't work.
Mm-hmm.
You'll just probably make it worse.
That's right.
But if you do, that can be a way that you drive a decent amount of business.
Yeah.
Long term.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you said secret sauce, it made me think about McDonald's secret sauce on their Big Mac and made me hungry. Not gonna lie, but it actually gave me this funny picture of an analogy or illustration of a restaurant, right? And funny enough, we're talking B2B here, but I think a lot of B2C people who get it right, especially small, they stand out. And so let me just say the point so I don't forget it. But the point is, what we have to do with our content is we have to demonstrate our uniqueness. We have to demonstrate that through the content so that it is, and make it shareable, make it these things that, grab attention, are engaging, but we have to demonstrate our expertise. We have to demonstrate our product, we have to demonstrate our service, we have to demonstrate our culture, we have to demonstrate all these things through content so that they can float around in that ecosystem. You want to be a little bit more dialed in than just letting it float around, but eventually it's going to float around. It's going to get shared around. And if it hits any of those parties, is it going to have value? But the thought that comes to mind with the secret sauce is restaurants. You go there because you really enjoy the taste of a certain dish, and you enjoy the experience of the really nice restaurants that you want to go back to. And not necessarily 5-star restaurants, but you had a good experience. That's a big deal. The food was really good and the service was good. I think that plays for most businesses too. I follow a bakery in Lakeland on Instagram, and have followed them from like probably 7 years, 8 years. It's a weird thing because I don't follow any local restaurants like that, but I followed them because of their story. They started out the farmers market and they had their stuff together. The branding was in place. They really had a good storyline to what they were doing. Their food was amazing, and it stood out because there's not any other bakeries like them around. There's not anywhere near that I can find. So we would drive to Lakeland when we were down there. This is like an hour and a half, 2-hour drive just to go to the bakery. And I would follow them on Instagram and enjoy feeling like I was part of the success because I'm there liking their post and commenting and being a part of that. But what they were doing is demonstrating what it looks like for a company to be passionate about something. And they're building a community around what they're doing, which is all relationships. That was scaled massively, so much that I think it attracted a bunch of investors. So to that whole point, I think demonstrating what you do well, how you're unique, clearly saying what it is that you do for whom in a way that adds value to each of those parties, people are going to start to follow that. And when they start to follow that, therein lies the scalability.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with all that more. Like the example that really comes to mind, the word I think that I pulled out of what you just said is the word experience. So
Mm-hmm.
I like to talk to our clients and just think about more. It's not content. It's content based experiences.
Correct. Yeah.
So that makes it broader,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because what is content? Again, I think I had a mentor of mine that said, you know, words are important. Use them wisely. And
Yes.
like the further along I get in my career, the more I realize, like, yes, definitions are so important. Not
Yeah.
just because it makes you sound smarter, but because it's so easy to go content. That's just blogs
Yeah.
or it's whatever.
Yeah.
But the example I want to throw out there is this content based experience. So we were driving. We're in Arizona. We were driving through Prescott, and all of a sudden we see this like crazy building that looks like a fantasy castle with slides and
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of stuff. We're like, is that a playhouse? Is it a play? Like, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
You guess what it is?
Hotel.
Dentist office.
Oh my gosh. Of all things,
Yeah.
they
Giant.
went for it.
But they, I mean, I don't know them, like, but I did
Yeah.
find like an article and things like that because I wondered, like, what the hell is this? And I cannot imagine they're not making a killing
Yeah. I
because
know.
rather than going, oh,
Yeah.
we can create some user stories, which I'm sure they did. I didn't do enough research
Mm-hmm.
to be honest. I'm sure they have some, and just running paid ads or running a newspaper thing. But they created this experience, which then they can then repurpose. Right now, they can
Yes.
run ads, be like, hey, like they can throw an event, and the
Mm-hmm.
event rather than doing it on a parking lot,
Mm-hmm.
it's in their freaking playground of a building,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. No. And
Which
what
kid
they've
is not
done,
going to want to go to that dentist
they've
office?
taken the mystique out of, or the anxiety
Yeah,
out of going to the dentist for these bad things, and
yeah,
said almost like, hey, you could come to our dentist office whenever you want to have
yeah,
fun and go to the playground. And then, by the way, you could also get your teeth cleaned while you're here.
yeah. So like that's the example I think of, and again going back to your thing of there's a lot of examples of B2C. I think what
Mhm.
B2C does amazingly well in general compared to
Yeah.
B2B for the most part is these experiences,
Mm-hmm.
experiential marketing, whatever you want to call it. But does it have to be events? And does it have to be this? Right? Does everybody have to go build a playground? No.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Does
And
everybody have to have a podcast? No. Does everybody have to run
no.
events? No. But you do need to create something that gets at, like you said, these unique pain points and
Mm-hmm.
problems that people have and provide value to them in a way. It's not just about like, hey,
Yes.
here's an ebook. No, I also don't want to bash ebooks either.
Yeah.
I
It
think
could.
there are guides, and
Yeah.
we've done this for clients. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure
Listen,
you have
I
too.
don't bash bus ads or direct mail or any of that, because all of it is a vehicle to demonstrating your expertise or your uniqueness if your market is there and willing to. I mean, I've done work with government agencies where we're putting together bus ads that,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where the people are, and we'll see,
Yep.
so you got to go where the people are, and you got to
Yep.
speak their language.
As long as it's all in the name of building that relationship,
Hmm.
the channel is agnostic of that in theory.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
that.
yeah.
So again, go back to full circle, right? It's how do you build relationships with the right people as quickly as possible?
Yes.
Solve that problem. How do you,
Yes.
and then really the next level of that is how do you have the most quality conversations with your entire ecosystem?
Yes. 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 That's it. I think that's the question that I think these marketing leaders should take to their strategy and planning sessions when they're talking with their team and their execs about how did we get here? Where are those people? How are we unique, and how do we want to take that uniqueness to them in a scaled way? And you mentioned this about the dentist office. What comes to mind for me is pub subs for Publix. we're in Florida, so
Mhm.
we have a lot of Publix down here.
Yep.
But they killed it with the pub sub. It's a whole kind of colloquialism, almost like going to get my pub sub, right? And what's so cool about that is it's almost a brand outside of Publix brand. And so to that point, I think like starting a service or having something that complements something else you do can be your
Mhm.
uniqueness. It can be the driver. It doesn't necessarily have to be the uniqueness within your current service. It just depends, like grocery stores or grocery stores or grocery store. Well, we need something a little different. um, Maybe your service is just like every other service. So what are you going to do that's unique? Or what about what you do is unique? That's probably a good place to start.
Yeah,
Because if you can't say what that is, then you got a problem.
I mean, I do think you have to connect it to. It's got to be relevant to what you do and the pain
Hmm.
points that you solve, right? So
Hmm.
again, we have some relatives in South Florida. There's been plenty of Publix. I haven't heard of the pub sub, but
Yeah.
pretty straightforward. I think again, it comes down to, hey, people are coming in anyway.
Yeah.
How do we make the experience better? Because that's what people want.
Hmm.
The reality is
That's
grocery
it.
shop is a pain in the ass.
Yeah. It's well,
There's
and
some
so
people that
there.
enjoy it, but if you think like
Yeah.
Costco, it's the dollar, the $1.50 hot dogs or whatever. I never buy them, but I know people do,
Yeah.
and like the soda and whatever.
Yeah.
The $2 pizza slice, like that's an experience.
Yeah.
And, like people just go there. IKEA, the meatballs or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's how do you make the shopping experience
Well, so
better?
funny. It's funny you hit on that because Publix, up until like just a few months ago, their tagline was "Where shopping is a pleasure,"
Mhm.
and shopping for sure is a pleasure when you go to Publix versus pretty much any other grocery store you can go to. Like it's head and shoulders.
Yep.
But so what they did was they turned the pubs up, and they have other things too like that. But I thought it's brilliant. Like
Mhm.
you have an affordable, fast, good, easy sub combo. You can come on your lunch break, get it, and you're probably going to pick up a couple things that you need for the house at the same
Yep.
time. I mean, every time I go to
Even if
Publix,
it's a loss leader, who cares?
I can go in there for 10 minutes and it's always 30 bucks, 30 bucks, 30 bucks. I mean, I'm buying a
Yep.
pack of gum, it's 30 bucks. So like
Yep.
they've got me.
Yep. Exactly. Um,
This is good though. This is a good I think this is a really good sort of primer for this conversation for marketing leaders. And what would be interesting, I think, we'll just put this out there kind of public, would be cool to have myself and you and maybe one other marketing agency leader, and bring this topic back up and have a panel, and maybe bring on one or two marketing leaders that are actually in the seat, and have a
I've got
kind
a
of a
good one
round.
for you that I just spoke with. I think she'd be great.
Yeah, I think that would be good to do a little panel like that. I think I got a lot of benefit from going to panels, listening to back in the day, listen to CMOs of local companies talk to agencies and tell them what they how they're thinking. If you're
Yep.
self-aware at all, and you want to sit there and actually listen to what they're really saying behind what they're saying, you can really serve them well. So I think that similarly would be a benefit to marketing leaders here.
Yep. Definitely. I'm
Cool.
game.
All right. Well, if you're a marketing leader listening to this and you want to hear that, let us know, and we'll put it together. It sounds like a good project anyway, so I'll probably get started working on that. But hey, Mike, it's been great, as I knew it would. And so thanks for your time. If people want to reach out and find you, where should I send them?
LinkedIn's the best. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's kind of my
Yeah.
primary channel. I dabble pretty much everywhere else, but
Yeah.
that's the primary. So um, we got we have a podcast, the Master Marketer Show. We've got a live
Hmm.
relationship like growth live that we do every Thursday. And then if anybody wants to hear me rant on marketing adjacent things, me and a friend of mine just started a podcast called Marketing Adjacent.
Nice.
So
Hey.
there's that.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll link all that. What was the first podcast you mentioned?
The Master Marketer Show.
Master Marketer. Okay. Make sure we
I'll
get
send you all
all
the
that
stuff. Yeah. Feel
documented
free to
there.
link to
Great.
whatever you want.
Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah. Hit Mike up on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks
Like this
again.
has been fun. I feel like
Yeah.
we could
It's
talk for
been,
hours on this. So
oh, yeah. There's so much more. There's so much more here. Hey, thanks again for tuning in. I hope you're getting value out of this. If you didn't know, we have an email newsletter that follows this podcast, Exploring Growth newsletter. If you go to harvardmurray.com and you click on podcast at the top, you'll see a little submission box there about quarter of the way down. You can sign up for the email. Every week, I literally sit down and write my thoughts of what's going through my head at the moment. Things that I'm dealing with clients, concepts that I'm learning or deployed that have worked. I talk about everything that marketing, sales, customer success, everything in between. So if that's something that you're interested in reading or subscribing to, definitely go there and check that out.